Just want to make sure. Can you hear me? Put on a little window in here just to see the chat every once in a while. Alrighty. Buck, can you hear me? Just making sure. Alright. Might be a little delay, but as far as I can tell, things are working a-okay. So I'll check out every once in a while the chat, just in case. But either way, hi everyone, and welcome back to the Artstream, where I am working on the art, animation, assets, ideas, and what have you of Planet Defense. Now, what I want to do right now is continue where we left off and take this little llama figure that we had, that I did a bit of a cleanup and prepared it some more, and take it straight ahead to animation in Spine. So again, like the previous streams, I'm just making sure that it's clear. I'll explain everything and I'll go all over the process as we work. But there might be times that I'm a bit more focused, I'm a bit more quiet, and this time we also have a very special guest. We have a small pup in the background. He might be snoring and you might be hearing him, or he will bark every once in a while and I'll tell him to be quiet. And with that said, let's go. So last we were working on the llama, and I remember that last time I also had a bit of a pickle with the back leg, and for the time being I decided to go with this solution. Just so you'll see for the curious. So you want to do this, it's not too weird what happens to the shadow here. But never mind, it's just for anyone who's been in the previous stream. And with that, let's go. So the first thing I want to do is take the entire Photoshop layers, files that we did for the cutout character, the llama, and bring it into Spine. And Spine is our animation software. It's a very, very efficient animation software for 2D, cutout, etc., especially for games. You also have Flash and After Effects as alternatives, and Spriter and what have you, but personally I found Spine very, very efficient and manageable. So there's more than one way to bring this character Spine. You can, let me show you one way, but then I'll show you the more efficient way, I believe. The first thing you can do is actually go into each and every layer. You remember that we did a smart object on each one, meaning that each one is like a separate picture inside the Photoshop. And one of the things that you can do is to save it individually as a PNG file. PNG means that it's transparent. Which means it has alpha, meaning you can move it and you won't have this bizarre white background and what have you. And the thing is, one of the things that I learned recently actually is that you need to go into each one and save it as a picture individually. Otherwise, you'll have a weird coloring issue in Spine, something that didn't know up until recently, that after I revisited old files. However, an even more efficient way is actually to export it directly with a little script Spines themselves made. I will link into where you can download the script. But you know what? For sake of the matter, let's take a look at the first way, and then we'll take a look at the more efficient way. In case you're not, you can't find the script for some reason, or you want to see the alternative work method. All right. So let's say, for example, front ear, the neck, the body. Let's take a couple of files. So you see, I went into each one, went into the PNG file, save it as a PNG. Let's go back to where we had the llama, animals, llama. We'll do a new folder called images. And here, we'll save it F ear. And now you will see, let's go into the relevant location. Right, and we have, now see we have this. You can ignore the edges, that's okay. It's just a weird quirk of a PNG file to see like this. When you put it in Spine, it doesn't actually show. Let's do this with one or two more. They won't be very relevant either way, but it's okay. Again. Call this neck and make sure we're in the right place. Okie doke. And let's do this with the head last. Here, head. Right, head 01. I'll name it 01 because we have actually two heads. Remember, we made a replacement of a sneezing head and the regular head. Okie doke. So, see, by the way, all right. Now, okay. So let's go into Spine and let's see exactly how this thing looks. So, this is how a blank file looks. Just only all the options. There's all these weird ass menus on the side and what have you. How do you start? After we saved a couple of images for a cutout character, how do you even go about this? First thing you want is those actual images, those PNGs that we just saved. So, we'll click on images, and then we'll browse and we'll go into the relevant folder. See, character, animals, llama, images. Then we select. Now you're going to see we have some fresh new files in here. If we drag all three, this is what we get. Okay. Now, wait a minute. Now, this is all fine and well, but what do you do? How do you move it? You just put them right up, and now this is on the back, and this is on the front, and what the hell is going on? Okay, let's go over some of the fundamentals before, like I said, we go on the more efficient route to importing the images. So the moment that you import the images into Spine, first you'll notice, like I said, that the order is weird and mixed, and I needed to manually adjust it. It wasn't just put into place. It was like this. It's a bit of a random thing. So it's okay. Like I said, it's part of the inefficiency. But let's fix it in case you do find yourself working this way. So you'll see when I dragged it in here, we have several new things, all these fresh new options, what to use, what to do, what to animate. The first thing I want to make sure is that I make it in the right order. So I have this option in here, draw order. And now you see this works very similarly to Photoshop, meaning the top will be the visible and everything beneath it will be like behind it. You see the F here is not F at all. It's the back. Let's raise it up. We'll drag it. And now it's in the front. The neck behind. Now it's starting to look a bit more like the llama that we drew. So this is good. And then I can, like I said, move it, put it wherever I want. However, as you just saw, this method is rather inefficient. It can take a long time. I used to do it with a lot of my work, actually, until I found a much, much better alternative. So let's make a new project. Don't need to save this, it's okay. And now let's go about this the other way around. Let's take the script. Photoshop the spine. Like I said, the script is in GitHub, and I'll link it very soon or right after the stream. Now what we want to do, this script, we want to drag this just over the Photoshop file. Now you see this appears. Has many options. This is basically how you want it to show, as far as I can tell. And here you have the output paths. There's the images, which is exactly what we saw earlier. And where is the JSON file? JSON file is the actual file, the data file of the character. It's what you want to import to Spine. And afterwards, it's actually a part of what we will export. So let's take where we were. We can delete these. We don't need those anymore. Copy address. And put it in here. The JSON file will do one up. Oh, yes. Just to make sure it's not in the same folder so we won't get confused, because we're going to have a bunch of images. And let's do OK. See what happens. Now it's starting to think. You see that it's exporting each and every one. Now let's take a look at what happened. Awesome. So we have all the files separated just like we prepared it, and with the relevant names and what have you. Okay, cool. Now, created another thing. Created this. This is the JSON file. Well, it looks like a notepad, but don't worry. Now let's see how we import it in the Spine. In the main menu, you do import data. Not import project, because import project is actually another Spine file, and right now we don't have one. So let's take import data. JSON or binary, which is exactly what we just took. Not the humans. We'll get to the humans another day. Go to the llama and do this. And go. We don't need anything behind. Amazing. So this is how it looks if it's not sure where the actual pictures is, which is kind of funny. I think it's used to automatically think that it's in the same folder. But no worries, we can fix this easy peasy. Click on images. See the path? Llama images. Let's try this again. Okay, weird Spine thing. So just click and make sure that it's again in the same place, and then you'll have everything. And now Llama is not only set up already for us, it's also in the correct order. And that's part of the nifty thing about this script. So what we're going to do now, we're going to select all the images, not the root bone. I will explain in a moment why. We're going to click Control, drag, and then the V button is the move. I'm going to put it in here. This is a fine location. Alrighty. Click Escape, deselect. Okay, So step 1 is complete. We already have our character. Each thing has this weird white circle right next to it. Let me just take a sip of my coffee. Sorry. All right. Cool. So what's the next step? Does it start moving? What do we do? Well, not yet. So let's talk for a moment about how does the character actually move. We talked about the fact that it's a cutout character, meaning it's just a bunch of images on top of each other. But right now, it doesn't move right, and it's actually not animatable at all yet. Let's see what we have on the right, and then we'll talk exactly about what spine does. So on the right, we said we had the images. The images, we dragged them, and then it created these circles. Circles are attachments. Attachments is kind of like, how do I put this? It's rather similar to smart object in a lot of ways, which means it's like it has data inside of it. It has the image itself inside. This is like a folder file. You can put a lot of images under this. Hypothetically, I can put more and more. But the thing is, one of the interesting things of the attachments is that if it has, if it has multiple images under a single attachment, it will replace it. Each attachment, this white circle, can only have one image active at a time. Which means if you put multiple images, it will choose. You see, right now it's like, what? And where is it? Down here. So we'll move it into the correct place. Let's just make sure. I forgot to drag it along with the rest of the files, but never mind. Let's make sure. Okay. And this we don't need. So let's delete this. The X down. Now, one of the nice things is that the moment that we'll go into the actual animation itself, we can actually set a specific time in which it can be replaced. And then we can create the sneezing animation a lot easier, or the spitting. Not the. I keep saying sneezing. I just remember that it's spitting. It was my own silly gag. Alrighty. So let's see. First and foremost, before we move on and we get to the actual making of the animation, any questions? Anyone? Take a look. The chat in here, just to make sure. All right. So far I don't see any, but I'll come back into here in a couple of minutes and let's see how it goes. Worst case, you can look later, and like all the streams, it will be up a short time later. Okay. So in order to make sure that we can actually move this llama, we need to make sure of one thing. If we try to animate it as it is now, nothing will happen. There is no specific way for it to understand how it should move. And what we want to do is we want to go to this root bone, and we need to create bones. Bones is the way that Spine and plenty of actually other animation software reads and translates your actions into movements in the cutout character. It's extremely relevant to 3D animation actually, but it's also relevant. After has something similar in the plugin Doic, and I think that Animate is starting to go over these principles. But either way, let's see. Let's start. I'll just try to explain as I go. I'll click on the root, which is the central bone. Everything comes eventually from this. See, if I move this, all the images move together. But I want to make sure that each one has a bone or two that can move this thingy. So let's start by clicking on Create. Then I'll drag this. And I'll drag this in here. And now each time you drag, from the moment you started to create a bone, it will create with the former bone as its parent, meaning that hypothetically we stop creating, we'll move this, you will see it controls the child bone, the bone that we created later. Okay, let's continue. So after we created these two bones, that they will control the body, let's create the neck. Since it has a long neck, I wanted to have several joints. And in here, this will be the head bone. Although actually, let's do this a bit different. I clicked Control-Z because I decided that I want the head bone to work a bit different, with a bit of a different pivot. And after I clicked on the neck bone, I want it to work from here. Now, again, like the Photoshop, it's very important to explain that there's a lot of testing going on. Meaning I know more or less what I'm doing, but eventually if I see that something isn't working properly, for example, if I do this, and I see that it's not really moving the way I want, then I'll change it. And I'll reroute the whatever I need to. Okay. For example, I can already tell that this needs to be longer. Now you see that there's a lot of data and information appearing on each bone, and I can control the length from here. Let's add. Let's try 192. And we can make this even longer. Okay, fair enough. Again, worst case, changed later. Now, let's create a little something for the legs. 1, 2, and 3. To move its little hoof around. From here, I want to select the back legs. Since this is a very, very simple rig, it's not going to have very complex actions or movements. I'm going to go like this, like this, like this. This is not crucial for me. Worst case, I can make this shorter. I can move it down, I can play with it, do whatever I need it to do. But for now, let's keep it like this. Let's save, which is very, very important. Go to the llama and llama anim 01. Okay, now let's continue. So far it's pretty straightforward actually. Let's make one for the tail. And now, in order to shorten the entire process, let's take this and let's duplicate it. We'll duplicate both of these in order to control the back legs. Right now we worked on the front. Now we want to make sure that it's the same thing for the back. So let's see, Control D. See that it got duplicated. Now we're going to move it over here. Same thing goes to back of these. Let's just create a little thing for the ears. And for the sake of the matter, let's give this one. Okay, cool. We have a basic skeleton. If we don't see any of the images, this is how it looks. It's kind of weird, but it does actually remind the shape of the llama, surprisingly enough. Let's bring this back. And now, before we continue, first thing I want to do is to rename everything. Because if there is one thing that is more important than almost everything else in every project that you do, it's keeping it orderly. And I don't know what to move if it's all bone 21. So let's rename this. We'll try to think of a logical name. Let's call this hip/cog. Cog meaning center of gravity, meaning this is the thing that controls all the actions. All right? This is going to be torso, and this will be neck 1, neck 2, and neck 3. This will be head, F ear, and B ear. It's getting a bit windy outside. Kind of funny. Right today we moved into summer clock, I think. And for some reason it's not summery at all. And usually in Israel it's much more summery at this time of the year. But I don't mind, personally. I like the winter. So, tail. By the way, sometimes I add the suffix of joint or JNT or bone or what have you, if I think it helps me to keep it a bit more function, like tail, JNT, but it's not crucial. Depends how you like to work. Now, let's see. Just making sure, what did we say about this one? What's the name? BF leg. All right, so BF leg 1, BF leg 2, and BF leg 3. Okay, moving on. B leg 1, B leg 2. All right. Now, oh, my bad. FF leg. Same naming convention overall. 1, 2, 3. This FB. You can see that at the bottom the name appears in case you need it. See, bone 15 or whatever, and FB leg. Okay, so FB leg 1, FB leg 2, and FB leg 3. Okay, awesome. And now, for the sake of it, because it make it a bit more clear and nice, let's give these things color. On the bottom right, you can see that we have this little thing of a color slot, and we can change it to whatever we think is relevant and necessary. Also, if you're working in a certain pipeline that you're used to this certain method, then it helps to just remember how you used to work. Maybe if you take a look at the project a long time afterwards, and you're used to coloring certain things in a certain manner, then it helps. For example, I'm going to give the front parts a different color than the back, because if in case that everything gets a bit mixed up because the bones are close to each other, it might get confusing. So why not give it a very nice to read visual interpretation. Okay, we'll take the neck and we'll give it a reddish. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't affect the animation itself. It's just how do you like to see your things. Let's give this kind of color. And this will give something kind of similar to the torso. Okay, cool. So step 2 is complete. Setting up, almost complete, sorry. There are certain things that I still need to add. For example, how do I control the shadow? So let's solve it by adding 2 more joints. One of them, something that is very simple. Just click instead of dragging, so it doesn't create this triangular shapes. Call it shadow. And just to help me, let's change the icon. On the bottom right, right next to where we have the collar, let's click on this and give this this thingy. Really not critical. And we'll give it, again, nice, easy to distinguish color. And we'll add 1 more bone. Now, this is a bit more technical than the previous things. The root bone, when we take the character into the game, the root bone will determine where the character is exactly and all of its basic data. We always want this to be reset to its base settings. Size, scale, location, what have you. We want it to be like 0. Like in here, 0 or 1 on the scale. You see on these little data to the left. So, but we do want to be able to manipulate this character a bit. So what are we going to do? We're going to create another bone. We'll call it, let's come with another thingy. We'll call this root anim. Now, this is going to be connected to the basic root joint, but everything else is going to be connected. Let's click on P, which is the short for parent. All of it is going to be parented to the root animated. So, just a moment. Okay. Now, let's take a look without the images exactly what's going on. It's going to look a bit freaky. Let's see. Okay, cool. Freaky but cool. So this we can change and manipulate freely. This we don't want to. For technical reasons, like I said, the root bone needs to be resetted so it will function properly inside the game. But the root anim, the one that we created that we can change, is completely free. So awesome. So that we can play with it as much as we want. Now we basically have step 2, which is complete. But now we need to make sure that if we move these bones, it will actually affect the image, because right now it doesn't do a dang thing. Okay. Any questions so far on the chat? All right. Okay, let's just make sure. Any questions so far? And I'll take a look in a minute. Now let's move to what's probably the most important part after setting up the skeleton. That's, like I said, making sure that the thing actually moves. So, in order to make sure this is all working properly, what we can do is we can take the attachments. Let's take the body, click on P, and then select the relevant root bone. I'm gonna explain this, like the first bone for each part that we want to move. For example, let's click on the hip center of gravity thingy. Now we're gonna see that the attachment moved in here. Now it's parented here in the menu, the entire information panel. Now if we're gonna move it, the image moves, which is a big improvement. Not perfect yet, but it's an improvement. Now notice that when I do this, like again, I parented the attachment, not the image itself. The image itself, because of restrictions on spine, and it's something very healthy on the program itself and the animation afterwards, sits under an attachment. So I select the attachment, this white circle thing, and that I parent to the relevant bone. Let's continue. Do it like this. FF leg in here, BF leg in here, B leg in here, FB leg in here, in here, shadow to the shadow bone, and the tail in here. Now let's take a look at what happens when we move. Still won't be perfect, but it's gonna be a big change. Okay, it's a good improvement. This doesn't really do what it's supposed to do yet. It's kind of funny, but not really that thing yet. I love how characters break when you try to move them before they're good. Or if you really want to push all the bones. This moves well. Look at how happy he is. Okay. This moves fine. This moves fine. Okay. This moves a bit weird, actually. So here's an example of something that I want to reiterate, because if I move this in here, this is not the natural way a head should move from its neck. This is fine relatively. This isn't. So what I'm gonna do, let's make this a bit shorter. Even shorter. And I'm going to create another bone. Let's call this neck. Is it neck 3? Does it make sense? Just a second. We have neck 1, neck 2, neck 3. Oh, neck 04. And to fix this, we're going to take this main bone, click on P, set it to this one. Now, the thing is that I do want this bone to remain, because this can give me individual control over things that I want. Maybe if I just want to only control the size, which looks very funky, but we can play with this. But from here, I'm going to move the root. This is like the actual neck movement of the head. Just need to remember it when I go animating. So, cool. But now, how do we start making this thing move the way we want it to move? So, in order to do this, we're going to play with a really cool feature that Spine has, which is called a mesh. This is something that all the tools that I created so far are tools that all the versions of Spine have, but the Spine Pro, which is the version you want in case you're going into this, not a very expensive program, by the way, to buy, so I highly recommend it, has this feature called Mesh, which enables images to twist and bend according with the bones. So how do we do this? Let's select the neck, a very good example of this. And when we select it, we have several options, and one of them is Mesh. Now what happened? In here, not much. But you will see that on the right, the icon actually changed to this weird dotted turquoise thing. And we have several new options, like Edit Mesh. Okay, let's click on this. Now the entire menu changed. We can't control any of the other bones. There's nothing that has to do with the bones actually. Only with the image now turned mesh. Let's click on isolate so we can take a look only at it. Okay? It and the bones, which are actually useful in this case. It's very it's good that we can get to see them. So now we get to control exactly how Spine reads the image for it to bend. And we're going to use the bones to our advantage graphically. This is a very nice tip that I actually learned from one of my good friends. So let's click on New. Now we get to drag several of the things in here. You can do either New or Create and Delete. I will show this as well in a moment. We get to surround the picture and create all these new dots that will define the borders instead of this just rectangle. And done. See, it looks pretty different. Okay, cool. How close or how nice are the dots relative to the bones? They're not perfect, but we can control this. On the modify option, every time we click on a dot, we can move it just a bit. Click on create, we can create new ones. And of course delete, deletes what you don't need. So let's create something internal in here. We click and drag, we can create something inside the image, and you see all these little lines on the in the middle changed a bit. This is how it's gonna move after we finish editing the mesh. This is like how it actually reads the image. And every time that we create more dots, it creates more data for it to read, which can be sometimes inefficient as well. And but it also helps us to create a bit of a smoother, more elegant movement, as you will see in a moment. Now I'm playing with it a bit just to make sure that it reads nice, that it bends properly when we're done. All right, just in case, let's add a bit more. Not crucial, especially not for plan defense, which the units are very small and a lot of the tiny deformations you don't really get to see. And okay, and we're done. Now what we're going to do is we're going to tell it to listen to the neck bones. How do we do this part? Combine. When we click on bind, we tell him, okay, you listen to 1, 2, 3, and 4. Cooper is snoring and he's adorable. Sorry. All right. Now that we're finished, what's going to happen? Let's click on all the bones on the neck and see. Okay. Not perfect, but better. Okay, some of the things here are not perfect at all. How do we fix this? Let's edit the mesh a bit. There's probably not enough information in here. It's part of the reason that it reads a bit too weird. Let's add some more of these dots, which are called, by the way, vertices. It's a known term from 3D, by the way. This will help it read it a bit better. It takes a bit of a time, experience, trial and error to see how exactly this works. But let's try. Okay, not perfect, but it's a bit better. Here it's still a bit weird. If you click on the image, you can see exactly what it's done in order to achieve this new form. And so what we're gonna do in here, I'm gonna add a bit of information. Should be overall okay now. Not perfect, but it's also not too bad. It's good enough for now. All right, so now let's do this with some more parts. The neck is the biggest, but it ain't the only one. So again, now this time we'll do it in a bit of a different method. This time I'm going to show you how to create the mesh from the rectangle initially, instead of creating it from scratch with the new button. By the way, reset, of course, resets everything to the original rectangle, and generate just created a lot of new vertices inside. I don't use it just without thinking about it first. It's kind of similar to what we did automatically on the neck. So let's try it a bit more manually. This is rather similar to what we did, but we rely on the rectangular shape initially. And afterwards, we're going to delete some of the parts to make sure that it's still in the borders that we want. This way of doing things can have a positive effect, like in just making sure you don't miss anything, but a lot of the time it creates a bit of complications actually. So usually I start with the new shape that I define rather than like this. But like I said, I want to show you more than one way to approach this. Now, the problem starts once you have weird things like this, which means the borders are still a bit confused. You need to be a bit sharp-eyed to notice these. Sometimes it's borderline impossible, actually, and it just might happen now. But let's take a look. Oh, I'm not done. Let's use the bones as this landmark again. Okay. Now in here there's going to be a bend, so I know for sure this is important. And you know what? I'm gonna add a little bit of more information in here, because I do want the tailbone to affect just a teeny weeny bit on the end of the body. So it will be really cute when it moves the tail. Okay, now click on bind. We'll select these two and we'll add the tail later. It's not as crucial. Now it does like this. Okay. Moves rather nice. Look at this llama reaching for the sky. Okay. Alright. Any questions so far? let's see. Oh, hey there. Sorry, because I don't have two screens, so it took me a bit of time to take a look at the chat. So sorry for the late response. All right. Late to the party. Didn't get to check out the second stream. This is expensive for night. And this looks intimidating. It looks funky. Can't just floating. It's working. Which I think is pretty cool. Thanks. Yeah, it's pretty dope. It's a really, it's not as scary as it looks. To tell you the truth. Like it's a bit of a steep learning curve. Like a lot of software, but a lot of softwares. But actually, Spine is one of the more intuitive. Once you get to like get the hang of it, get the basis running, trial and error a bit so you can run. So then you can start just playing with it, and it's even more friendly once you start animating. And I'll get to this point a tiny bit, but I'll focus more on animation on the next stream. Is there a way to make the mesh make a grid automatically, like a standard cube grid you see? Not that I know, actually. There's some features probably will be added soon. One of the features that I really wanted to add on a later update is use the alpha, like the transparency, to create an automatic border, which is like what we did now. And it's not available yet, but one step at a time. And it's okay to get a bit of experience with trying to define these things and seeing what works less. So I hope that answers some of the questions. Okay, doke. And by the way, feel free to ask in here. Like I said, I will get to it a bit later after and try to answer to the best of my abilities. Right. So let's move on. And let's just continue with the same procedure. We'll do this with the legs. Edit mesh. By the way, technically, there is a way to also copy the mesh, what we're doing now, to other parts of the body. But I noticed that it can be a bit buggy at times, so you need to be careful with this feature. Maybe I'll show it on one of the next streams right now, because I want to keep moving. I'm going to do it. And like this, and done. And now, again, I'm adding and discarding, by the way, vertices as I see fit. Like I said, it's not the most crucial thing in the world. Just use the bones and these landmarks. And other than that, just go with the flow, trial and error, what have you. You know what? Not even sure that it needs that many more on the top. We do need on the bottom a bit more because there's gonna be a bit more of a bending movement when we animate it. So, you know what? Let's make sure. By the way, a nice tip that sometimes I forget myself, I just remembered it now, is that you can add vertices where you don't want things to bend, where there's a lot of visual information that you think this maybe needs to stay a bit more on the spot. For example, these fur folds. Any other place is much more deformable than where there's if there's not a vertices inside. Alrighty, let's bind this. Click on bind. 1, 2, 3, and let's see what we got. Click on the bone. C is for rotate, by the way. I didn't mention this earlier. Like I said, V is to move. Okay, it's okay. It's fine. This is a bit weird, but it's also okay because it's not supposed to bend that much forward actually. So it breaks a bit in here, it's not so bad. And in here, everything is fine. By the way, I think I talked about it a bit on the previous stream when we prepared the llama, but check out how cool it is when you think about where images overlap and intersect, and you move it right, and it looks kind of like it's a part of the drawing, except for now I see that when it overlaps with the neck, whoops. But let's fix it. You know what? While we're at it, let's take the FF leg here on the draw order, drag it above the neck. Now we're gonna move. All right. Weird, but it works, kind of. Let's try when we animate this not to intersect them too much. Okay, so where were we? You know what? Thinking in here. Okay. I do think maybe if there's a way to copy like the mesh so we won't repeat the process. I know that there is an option in here called linked mesh, which means that you create the exact same vertices in the form, but I'm not, you know what, let's give it a shot. Worst case, you will go over this little trial and error with me. Let's create this. Okay. I remember what's the problem. Okay. So the thing is that if we create this, it also listens to the same bones. That's not exactly what we want. We still want to use the logic of the back leg. Never mind. Worst case, if I'll find a better solution next time, I'll let you know. So, again, this. By the way, if at any given point you see something that maybe you want to fix, the problem with the image, you see that there was actually a problem with the with what you draw, you can take this as an opportunity to re-examine the work and go back to Photoshop and fix, and then just save a new PNG. It's okay, and it will replace it automatically once you go back to Spine. All the time you have this tiny little processes of trial and error, and just reiterating, retrying, and so on and so forth. So while it's not going to be pitch perfect, it's going to be very similar to what we done on the front leg. And a bit of a thing in here. This came out a bit messier. No, modify. Okay. But it's okay. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be functional. The best way to see if it's functional or not is later when you bring it to the game eventually, but also beforehand, like if you feel it works and it suffices, then it's fine. You can always go back and fix what you think needs a tiny bit of improvement. Alrighty, so let's mind. We'll see how this goes. It's going to be a bit different, but you see, works. It's fine. Fine for now. Also going to have a pretty cool little thing before we're finished the entire rigging process, which is exactly what it's called. Every time that you prepare a character for animation, doesn't matter if it's 3D, it's 2D, what have you, if you're using digital means to move it, then it's called rigging. Entire thing with the skeleton. basically. All right. So this one is going to be a bit funnier, and there is a good chance that we need to change a bit more as well with this one, because the deformation in here is going to be, because the way the leg is constructed works a bit different. There's a good chance that we'll actually need to change the bones a bit, so it will deform relatively well. And when we're done, we're gonna add some special features, like I said, and especially for the head. There's something that I want to do before we go. Okay, so here I can spot a problem, like I said. See, because this won't really bend. It doesn't need to. This part can. So we'll have a bit of a funny walk. But the upper part it won't. So let's do something a bit different. Now I'm playing around just to get an overall good shape. And I'm gonna change the bones setup in a moment. Just playing around, trying to get something that I kind of like, with enough information but not something crazy crucial. Also fixing was a bit more sloppy with the back leg, apparently. All right, and now what we're gonna do is, like I said, like we did it earlier, actually, it's exactly how we saw it coming. Let's see. Let's make this bone shorter. Take it in here. Make it even a bit shorter. Drag this to the top. And then we're gonna make this long, like maybe not so long, but close. All right, good enough. So like this. Just a second. Saving because it's important. Now, okay. If I remember correctly, I'm trying to just make sure of a thing or two because it was a bit sloppier and I want to change it, and I want to make sure that I take the opportunity to learn and teach something. Because what I want to do is move the bone, but only this bone, and afterwards fix the leg. Now we can do this, and we just might do it in a bit of a manual and messy way, like this, but I don't really like it. So what we will do now, let's see, I'm trying to think of a solution. Okay, what we're gonna do, we're gonna take the leg, and for momentarily we're gonna parent it back to the root. Now when we change it, it won't affect the image, and we can reset the location of everything we need manually, because we didn't bind it yet. And on the same note, we're going to do the exact same thing to the back leg, which suffers from the same problem. I'm going to delete this. We'll just take the name make sure that we rename this. We're going to delete it. No need to worry. Copy and move, because now we fixed the same problem on the back leg, so there's no need to go through the entire same arrangement with the back leg. All right, and now come on, color it. Thank you. All right, let's just change the name to make sure that it's correct. Oh, and we'll also change the numbers. Be like 1, be like 2, and be like 3. All right, let's see how we go. Restrict the rotation of a joint. I'm not sure, actually. That's something I need to check out. For the most part, all the bones can rotate and translate or move as much as you want, and you can break the character like, but there might be a way to restrict these kind of things, but it's not something that I got to explore yet. Okay, so now that we fixed all the problems for the back legs, you know what, let's just make a little test. We'll take this, we'll bind, let's see what happens. It's gonna be a bit funny. We're gonna get this big fluffy thing. This works fine. This, okay, not too shabby actually. It's kind of cute. This is a bit weird. There's a good chance that I will change the weight in a moment, and I'll show you how. Okay, let's do the same thing for the back leg. Let's see, edit mesh, new, do. This will be a bit more straightforward than it was with the last leg, because I've picked up on the problem. Okay. By the way, we got a bit of a spare minute or two. How are you doing? How was your week? Ever since we got to do another one of those. Okay. Let's do like this. So it might come off as a bit messy, by the way, but it's fine. Like I said, good enough, functional. Worst case, if something breaks down a bit, I'll learn. Which is always something you need to tell yourself when you're working. Like, worst case, you will learn. All right. Bind 1, 2, 3. Let's see. Okay, not bad. Cool. Okay, so the character is almost ready for animation, actually. What I will do is I'll have a few more cute features. Let's talk a little bit about rigging and legs, or to be a bit more exact, contact spots. Because think about it the following way. you have a lot of places where it makes a lot of sense that if you move all the thing, each part, it will move. When you move one bone, or how to explain? It's a bit hard to explain. Sorry. Most of the time, it's very normal and legitimate when you move like in order all the bones, like we did right now with the neck. The first part moves the next part, moves the next part, moves the final part. But sometimes when you have certain spots of contact, then you want to make sure that it sticks to the contact spot. Like it doesn't, for example, if I move the center of gravity, I don't want it to move the legs as well, which it will if I try to animate it. It's kind of a bummer. It will take a lot of time and manual work to each time move like this leg in here and this leg in here and this in here when I move like this, just to bring it back to the floor. It'll be a bit of a waste of time. So there is a way to solve it. Spine and a lot of other cool animation programs have this tool called constraints. Constraints means special applications and things you can do to the skeleton, to the rig, which will help it move the way you want. We'll give you a bit of a shortcut, a bit of a technical aid. For example, there's this thing called IKFK, which means forward kinematics and inverse kinematics. Kinematics meaning the bones, basically. So, a lot of explanation, pretty simple application actually. Let's select the parent bone and the child bone, and we'll click on new in here. You see IK. Alright, so what does this do? Click and click. Let's do BF leg IK. And now you see that something is a bit different. The bones look different. And what's going on in here? Now instead of listening in the original order, then the ending of the bone is what dictates where it will be. For example, instead of like a parent, child, now the child tells the parent, I'm gonna be here, like a little spoiled little child that he is. And if we move all the parent bones, you see that this stays in place, sort of, to the best of its abilities. Okay. And now that we've done this, and just in case, let's move this a bit back because I see that it played a bit with the placement of the entire mesh. And the last thing we're going to do, we're going to take the foot thing and we're going to parent it to the new IK. And now it's working rather nice. Not perfect, but rather nice. Cool. Let's do this with the other legs. Again, click on the parent, click on the child, IK, and BB leg, IK. And again, move this just to make sure it's in the right spot. Click on the final bone, P for parent, IK. Now, cool. We'll do this with the front legs as well, but just so you know, it can be used for a lot of different applications. Weapons and hands leaning on a wall, and I can hypothetically do it with the neck as well. Like there's tons of options, but it's most common to see it used on the legs because the legs are almost constantly in contact with something. But just in case that I don't want it active later on, say that I'm doing this really fancy movement with the legs and don't care if they're on the floor or not, I can always go on the animation window, which I will get to on the next stream. Click on this and change exactly how much the IK actually affects. You see that it does create this weird deformation because the foot still listens to the IK, but it's fine. I can always move it later. All right. So let's move on. We're pretty close to finish rigging the llama. We'll just add a little touch at the end. FF leg IK, and again do like this. And now just do this. Started raining in here. Whew. And last one, FB leg, I think. What was it? FB leg, yes. Part of the reason that really helps naming all the things is exactly because of this. As you think how to name and what. Okay. Cool. So, we're almost done. Let's add one more feature. Just checking if there's any more question. It's been good. Nice weather. Also feeling inspired. Adding more. How was your week? So the week was fine. It was very, very busy. There was a lot of things underway. You know specifically about the painting that I'm working on. That doesn't have to do with plant defense, but other than that, a lot of things for work and a lot of new plans for planet defense that I'm showing you right now. I also got to take, I think, almost all the animals and the new natural terrains and disasters that I shared with you and separate them for animation like I did with the llama. Like I'm busy on the production quite a bit. Yeah, it's been a fine week. Busy, but fine. And plus, I'm guarding this lovely little pooch. Like I said, it's called Cooper. He's sleeping on the couch right now behind me. And he's been helping me to get up early. Or like early and get out of bed very quick. So let's finish this cool little thing with one last touch. So one of the things that I want to do, so far everything was very, very standard, like for a rig, and that's fine. You don't always need a complex rig. Like it might look like a mess to the right, but you saw that it wasn't actually that complicated to get to this. It just looks scary. So what I want to do is that I want to make sure that you can actually scale the cheeks, because I really like the fact that he has these swollen cheeks. So how are we going to do this? Let's go in here and let's create another bone. We'll click on the head bone. We'll create this. Boop. We'll call it cheek. And now in order to make sure that we can do this, we do need to make sure that the head is a mesh. So we do it exactly like we did it earlier. It might also be useful later if I'll decide that I want to make a bit more of an advanced rig and have this little feature where I can move his nose. You know what? Let's add it right now. Because he has such a long head, might as well add this little feature. Okay, almost done, and cool. Now, let's make this thing where he can move the nose. So what we're gonna do, because I want to fix, again, like we do with the leg, I'll reparent it so I can fix it. Bring it back in a moment. Okay, some of the features will still be rather funny. So let's do the same thing with the ears. Or maybe better if I'll do this to the root. Not crucial. Either way, here. Just to make sure that they're all in the same spot. You can also click on the P, by the way, and reparent. Not in the view, you can also do it in here, in the hierarchy. It's not crucial, either way. Let's move it a bit to the top. And you'll see why in just a moment, because I want the root of it to make a bit more sense once I split it. How do you split a bone into more bones? Oh, and this will move in here. Click on the bone. Here you have a feature called split. I want this to be 3 bones. Okay? And nested, meaning one controls the next. Now we have 3 bones. It's very, very similar to what we had, only let's change a bit of the feature. We'll make this the middle bone a bit longer. Like 156 or so. 66. Okay, cool. That's a amount of work. How the heck do you find enough time in a day to do that? Actually, a lot of the time when I do find the time, it's like in sprints. I constantly feel like I'm struggling with time and that I can always be more efficient. So I don't always feel like I have the time. But one of the secrets that I learned is that you always feel like you don't have enough time, and you will be surprised at how much work you can get done in the little time that you do decide to just sit and work. It's not like, now I'm gonna work for 7 hours straight and I'm finally gonna be productive. It's like, no, you have 30 minutes. Okay, let's try to pull something off for 30 minutes. And it stacks. It really is like, it's kind of weird, but that's how it works. Just every time that you have the time and you can muster the energy, sit, do a little bit of work, a little bit of study, a little bit of something, and you will find yourself gaining mileage and gaining actual workload done. There's no secret to it. The only thing you need to know is that you will be surprised at the amount you get once you sit down, even if it's for little every time. So it's more or less how I get the work done, how I try to get it done at least. Like I said, I also struggle with this. So let's continue, and we'll just get all this Done. Now, let's see. Okay, now it's gonna be a bit tricky. See that there is some things that I can do different. So let's try to make a difference. We also need to be a bit more careful about the placement, because the face is one of those areas that you want to make sure doesn't deform or gets too weird, because it's much easier for everyone to notice when something is off with the face. So for example, we're gonna really limit the entire section of the cheek from the eyes and the mouth. Add a bit more information. Like I said, it's less likely to bend in these areas. So we're gonna save ourselves a bit of trouble by adding the information already. Okay. And it still might come off as kind of weird, by the way. These things most of the time ain't perfect, but it's fine. Part of the process. Now what we're gonna do, first and foremost, we're gonna bind. We're not gonna bind it to the cheek yet. We'll show you one of the last cool features about the spine and the skeleton deformation. Now let's see what happens. It's gonna look weird, but it's not too weird, surprisingly enough. It's like, it's still really weird, but not too weird. Okay, this is funny. Alright. So, let's play with the weights. Weights is like the name of how exactly the bones control. The bones control the entire mesh. If you click on an image or a mesh, you click on weights, and then it shows you all this weird thingy. Let's try to change it so the deformation, what we saw earlier, will be a bit more normal, as much as we can. We will still need to be kind of careful with how it works, but it's fine. So, the one thing that really bugged me, let's do overlay. This is a bit easier to see and to read. One of the things that really bugged me is that when I rotated the final bone, it changed the eye, and that was bizarre. So let's click on the top, we'll do remove. And here you have this little like cursor that every time you click, it will affect how every part that you press, exactly if it adds, removes, replace, what have you. Let's try to do this in here. Okay, we are removing the effect of the final bone. Let's do it a bit weaker now. And here, okay, now let's see what happens. Almost. Still a bit something weird in the middle. Okay. And in the bottom here, let's change the size. Okay, cool. The bottom in here, we need to be careful. Now it's supposed to be almost. Okay, good enough. Take the bones in here. It's really funny, but I actually kind of like it. Not always, we'll change this a bit. I'm not always really against bizarre deformation and cartoony feeling. You need to be very, very careful with these kind of things because sometimes it's too weird and too like doesn't work. Like sometimes you're surprised at what lovely features you can get. For example, let's add bit more strength to this to make sure that they move a bit more together. Might be off, but let's try. Let's see what happens. Okay. No. That was bad. Not critical. Not for now. Okay, so let's add the final thing. And now that it bends more or less okay. Worst case, like I said, I'll refine it like I did at home when I managed to do the cleanup with the leg. Worst case, later on, I'll refine the entire deformation, but I really wanted to go with you over how I do this. Just a moment. Okay. So, last but not least, let's add the feature that you can change the cheek. How do we do this? After we did the initial bind to all the bones, we're gonna add the cheek. Again, we're gonna click on the mesh. We're gonna click on bind. And we're gonna add the cheek, and click on bind again. Now the nice thing is that right now, because we added the cheek after we did the initial bones, it isn't weighted yet. It doesn't affect specifically all the places that the other bones do. So let's add it. Let's add exactly how the cheek affects. Let's increase the size of the brush. And now when I paint it, you're going to see that everything starts to get a bit orangey. And we're going to focus specifically on the area right around the cheek. And make sure that it doesn't affect everything around it. Or doesn't affect as much. Now let's see how this works. What happens? Nice. Okay, so we need to be very careful with this. It can look very, very weird, but it's not too bad. If you're subtle with this, just keeps on playing with the spit in its mouth. Cool. And now we are basically, oh, whoops. Forgot this part, my bad. Need to reparent this. Here we go. Back ear to the back ear and up. What happened here? Just a moment. Something got a bit messy, but not to worry. Yeah, some things that I forgot to bring back. Okay, so let's see. Let's do a little bit of a test now to see that our character is basically up and running. Cool. Like we did earlier with the neck. Select all the bones of the head. Okay, this is not perfect, but select this, also not perfect. Plus we have a little bit of a deformation problem in here, but I'll clean it up later. Later on, maybe I'll add to the ears. They can bend in a bit of a fancier way with the mesh, and I'll add some more bones. This, again, this works nice. And when I want to do it, a bit of a hopping and a bouncing, boop. Okay. Good enough for the time being. And later on, of course, when I'll do the animation of it spitting, I'll just make sure. A lot of information, but like I said, not as scary as it looks. I can just and I don't need the spitting head to be exactly the same like the mesh where it's connected to all the bones, because if I want, I can add it and make it connected to these bones, but it's not crucial. I just need it for several frames. And I don't need it also affected by the cheekbone like this one, because it doesn't have spit. It spat it out. Okay, cool. Any final questions, anyone? Before we finish, because this is what I wanted to go over. Taking a look for a minute or two. Right. Okay. So right now I don't see any questions, but worst case, if you'll have anything, feel free to ask me either personally or on the Planet Defense page. I'll be more than happy to answer questions. And that's about it for this week. So over the week, we'll go over the final step of creating the character ready for animation, and that's animating it, actually making it move, giving it several animations, and how we're gonna make it feel and look alive and cute and like the rest of the animals. And so that is it. I will see you very soon. I will announce in the next few days when the next stream is. It'll probably be either on Tuesday or next Saturday, like we did today, because these are like the most free days on the evenings that I have. And that's it. So have an awesome week. Thank you very much for joining, and I will see you soon. And happy planeting in the meantime. Oh, also inspired by protein, again, we'll keep an eye open, that sort of thing, my daily earning life. Okay. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.